Despite a fundamental shift in roles where the Pentagon is no longer the inventor driving government research and development and must now innovate largely with existing product on the commercial market, the Pentagon has continued using a system ill-designed for the digital and information age. The military faces peer competitors who don't have these same handcuffs of purchasing and an acquisition system that's of the Soviet-style management, and is increasingly falling behind our one pacing threat competitor in China. What used to take the government 5 years to buy now takes 25 years, from senior leader idea to product execution at full rate production. From characterizations of effort ranging from, quote, unbelievably slow to, quote, too late, the Pentagon cannot seem to break out of neutral and stop playing catch up, even as military balance is shifting away from America, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. The risk aversion, the emphasis on compliance, and value and low cost over speed and relevance are all built in, and they create a barrier wall of compliance designed to keep others out, particularly startups and small businesses. Even if Congress and the Pentagon used all available authorities to a maximum extent, more flexible funds are needed from appropriators, and which allows for speed and a new premium by contracting officers to go faster. It would also help if we had a shorter and less bureaucratic requirements generation process, a risk-taking culture in the defense workforce where failure is not punished, and program managers are willing to work with different and new companies. The entire Department of Defense needs to be at an Operation Warp Speed tempo, where urgency and humility are the watchwords and the armed forces reward speed and fielded capability over compliance or perfection. The Pentagon should cut development and production times to enable immediate implementation of available technology into the systems the military possesses today, while gathering data from that implementation to strengthen the new technologies still in design. Accepting a unilateral drawdown of trained manpower, capacity, and posture throughout the next decade would hurt the armed forces and our ability to maintain a balance of power across 3 theaters of the world. Now, we must not cede American military supremacy to a dusty death, but rather revise the pace of productivity by accepting that the armed forces cannot survive on buying time to gain capability, but rather buy capability to gain time. You have a modernization crunch across our conventional and strategic forces where the bills are all coming due roughly this decade, because most of what was bought in the 80s it's aging out at about the same time. The Pentagon is prioritizing the nuclear deterrent, and some things in the conventional forces portfolio are being sacrificed for that. If our peer competitors and pacing threat, for example, in China, see that we are weak in one area, of course, that's the area they'll seek to exploit and make more vulnerable. First, of course, is undersea, ranging from manned and unmanned capability, but particularly attack submarines as a top priority. I would focus on the need for competition within maintaining competition for future fighter development, such as the NGAD program. To do that, Congress would need to agree to continue F-15 procurement after this year when it is slated to end. Lastly is the size of the U.S. Army. The active duty force, I don't believe Congress would have ever actually voted on the Army shrinking by nearly 100,000 active duty soldiers in the last 5 years, which is essentially what's happened because of the recruiting challenges facing the U.S. Army. There is a culture problem at the Defense Department. I would strongly encourage Congress to never again approve a program that starts with a J, joint. Avoiding joint programs at all costs is one way to get at better oversight, more targeted accountability for these contractors. The Pentagon does need more resources, and I want to echo one of the points on data analytics. The department's business systems are woefully, we're talking the days of the floppy disk over there and fax machines, still required for a lot of companies to even still submit contracts to the contract bids to the department. So updating business systems would certainly help with tracking some of this, and the audit, of course, where you identify ahead of time improper payments and to the ranking member's opening statement, the types of problems that you outlined, sir.
With the cost of the remaining 4 carriers expected to only increase and the timeline for their delivery being pushed back to the 2030s, Do you believe these ships are worth a significant investment with the rapid evolvement?
In a war versus a pure competitor, Mr. Chairman, almost everything on the surface of the earth will be a vulnerable target. But if we get to the war, it means the U.S. military has failed in its core duty to keep the peace and uphold deterrence. So that winning the war is half the job. Keeping the peace and maintaining deterrence is the first part of that. These are floating American cities of sovereign territory, jam-packed with combat power on the top of it, that combatant commanders cannot get enough of for deterrence and competition. We are an 11-carrier Navy in a 15-carrier world. So if you want these crisis response tools, I would argue there's a great case for the carrier. The Defense Department is not keeping up with the technological change and refresh that's available in the commercial and the private markets. Part of this is a culture challenge at the department, and we talked earlier about the carrier air wings. There are products available right now today that are fully autonomous and unmanned that should be sitting and parked on a carrier deck at this moment. But really across the services, we should have the loyal wingman concept, right? So you have a manned fighter or a bomber. Next to it, you have an unmanned tanking drone. Next to that, you have an unmanned payload carrying, a weapons carrying drone. And the three go together. So like a 1-to-3, 1-to-2, or 2-to-1 ratio. The department, other countries, friends and allies, we're seeing it of course in Ukraine, but friends and allies, Australia is going faster. And many other countries are showing that these models work. The Defense Department, I worry that not only are they going too slow, it's going to take a crisis to wake them up to how it's going.